Best of r/malicious compliance episode 56. Subscribe for Reddit videos daily. This happened at work some time ago. Vendor is legal services company we are required to use with one or two of our clients. We'd prefer anybody else as they are pretty slow, expensive, and have been jerks to us for years. Apparently because we have the audacity to not use them exclusively. We missed paying one bill for this vendor on a case, likely got misplaced into the wrong stack. As soon as we noticed this the next day, we paid it. Even hand delivered the check to their office. It was a few days later they call us, demanding that we need to also pay the court mandated late payment fine. These vendors are to be paid for their service within X days of date it was rendered, or there is a fixed small fine paid to the vendor. By this point we figured out that in our rush to pay them that other morning, we accidentally also mailed them a second check, paying them twice. We told them this and to just consider that the fine payment. They did not care for this and that they were going to take this to court to have a judge make us also pay them the late fee. We agree, because this is going to be funny, and get a hearing date calendared. It ended up being a 5-minute hearing. The judge agrees that we need to pay the fine since it was indeed paid late, but because we had accidentally paid them twice already, he orders them to pay us back the difference of $200 and some change. Judge then spent the next 4 minutes berated them for being petty. So instead of getting paid double, they needed to be jerks and spend time and money for their lawyer to go to court for 5 minutes to then be ordered to pay us back most of an overpayment. Edit for clarity since there were a lot of similar comments. Legal bills are separated by case, client, copy job, etc., and not one single bill for everything at the end of the month. This is because everything gets expended up the chain and the money will come from various accounts, because insurance. So for this vendor, we had paid X1 of X bills, where X could be anywhere from a few to several hundred. The actual amounts of money here are trivial compared to our billable hourly rates. This is what made the whole thing even more silly. The check that got mailed was likely automatically generated from our billing system, which probably means that that specific bill came in late to us. We manually made the check that was hand delivered. This entire thing really didn't matter and wasn't worth any effort to figure out what exactly caused it happened, as something like this happens maybe once every few years. As I understand it, this particular fine here was a recent regularly changed because some of them were not getting paid for years and the entire process of them trying to get paid was one many leaking holes in this system. One of the lawyers explained it to me in excessive detail, but I have mostly forgotten all of it. That was months ago and not something that even involves me. LOL. They did not sue us over this. It was something like a procedural hearing. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the correct terminology here. It was still a laughable overstep by them, as what they did is the sort of thing for when you haven't been paid for months/years, not 12 hours. Would be nice if there was similar regulations on our bills to clients. It's pretty much our industry's standard for the last several years, where every bill is automatically cut 15-20% by third parties handling bill review. Often takes 2-6 months to get mostly fully paid. If you'd worked in medical billing before, you likely know this sort of thing well. Thank you. Next. We had a teacher in high school who no one really liked. He was a tough grader, and refused to change anyone's grades once they were posted on the board. I missed an assignment. Probably just forgot to do it, and I knew this would affect my overall grade. But, when I checked the board, I saw there was a 91% posted next to my name under that assignment. I knew for a fact that I had not done that one yet. That's when I noticed the girl below me had a blank next to her name under that assignment. She was a nice girl, who some might call a nerd, and she never missed an assignment. I knew exactly what had happened. He made a mistake and wrote her grade next to my name instead of hers. I debated on just leaving it as it was, and just letting her have a 0 instead of me, but I couldn't do that. It wasn't her fault that my teacher made a mistake. So, I went up to his desk. Him. What? Me. Hey sir, I just wanted to talk to you about my grade on assignment. Him. Sorry, you can't change your grade once it is on the board. Me. Yes, but. Him. I said, you can't change your grade once it is on the board, period. Me, okay. And I sat back down. Guess I'm getting a 91% on an assignment I didn't even do. I felt bad for the girl, so I gave it a few days, I'm not that much of an idiot, and I talked to her. I asked if she still had the assignment, because I noticed she had a blank on the board. She checked the board, and brought the already marked assignment up to the teacher. He knew she wouldn't lie about this, so he added her 91% to the board, right under mine. The icing on the cake is that 91% pushed my overall mark in the class to 80%, which gave me 6 courses over 80%. I took a lot of shop/art classes, which meant I graduated with honors. Seeing that H next to my name never felt so good. Thank you. Next. So, I work a night shift at a Burger King that runs pretty well together. We all know our stations well and run smoothly. Unfortunately, we have a staffing problem that means I have to stay late to take orders for drive-thru pretty regularly. I personally have no problem with it. More hours means more money. Our shift managers ask me to do it, so they obviously don't mind, and our general manager understands we're short-staffed. Our regional manager, on the other hand, had a big one. The regional, who I'll call R from now on, came in for the usual checkup he does every month and noticed I was regularly staying an hour or more late. Have angst, will travel. Why are you staying so late? Me, we're short-staffed at the moment, sir. It's necessary. Now looking a little peeved. From now on, you go home on time. The clock decides when you clock out. Understood? I nod and kowtow like a good corporate drone, and that's that for a while. Fast forward another month. We got a few new hires, but I still have to stay late, and on top of that, I'm training 2 of them. R comes back and sees that I'm still staying late. Condescending. How hard is it to understand? You cannot stay late anymore. Me, sir, I have to. Our staffing is too thin. I don't care. It's general manager's problem. If she can't schedule hours properly, that's on her. If I see you stay late again, your hours will be cut. Now, there's 2 things I disliked about this interaction. 1, he talked down to me and essentially called my manager incompetent. I understand he's a superior, but I believe a leader should treat their members with respect. 2, he threatened my livelihood. So, I decided to follow his orders. For the next month I clocked out at exactly when the clock changed and my time was up. During rushes or slow days, I never came in early or late, and the same with my leaving. My time always ended in 2 zeros. I felt bad for my co-workers, but they understood. Come next check-in, R calls in my general manager and asks why our orders take so long. Burger King times how long it takes for drive-thru to get to car out. She tells me later that she explained our staffing problem and that no one is around who can confidently cover drive after I'm gone. And since I'll leave and clock in on the dot, I sometimes leave them in chaos. 2 minutes later, I'm called in and told I can stay late again. TLDR. Regional manager tried to threaten my hours for staying late. Realized that I held my shift together. Edit. A lot of people are criticizing my GM for not fixing anything, but it's really not her fault. Our location is right where it's too residential to get transfers from other stores and also too close to business for a lot of locals to apply. The 3 people we got that month were a miracle, and working in fast food means a lot of our employees quit when school starts back up. The GM can't control people not applying. Also, I normally work 8-hour shifts, and in the state I reside in, even a minute after 8 hours, overtime kicks in, so I'm not working with no extra pay. Thirdly, I recently learned the RM had never been in general management and he had been hired as a regional straight out. Do with that what you will. Thank you. Next. I've been married for 20 years. Several times during these years we've gotten into a situation where I have to read a number to my wife. In the beginning it often went like this. Me, 5538 Fort. Wife, whoa, not so fast. Next time I said it slower, but still in large groups. Wife, not so many at a time. This happened a few times in various ways, always with a clear message to me. You can't go that fast. Over the years I learned to lower my tempo and say it in groups of 1 or 2 numbers, giving her plenty of time to write down and read back. Tough on my patience, but that's how it is. Now, after 20 years, we come to this gate where we got the code sent to us in a mail. She asked me to read it to her. I lowered my tempo a lot. Me, 1 wife, 1 presses 1. Me, 2 wife, 2 presses 2. Me, 3 wife, 3 presses 3. I went on like this all the way to 6. She got quite annoyed, but I had a good time. Thank you. Next. When I was just out of high school and trying to figure out which direction to take my life, I worked for a movie theater. I was trained to work every position in the theater, but my primary spot was as an usher, which taught tickets and cleaned theaters. But during winter, we also took care of the sidewalks outside. One of our managers, we had 6, was a bit of a prick, and he liked putting down a base layer of salt ahead of any snow. So one winter I'm closing the theater down. That involves me staying until every single theater lets out, making sure everyone gets out of the building, and checking the rear exits of each theater to make sure no one is stuck in the stairwells. It's around 12:30 in the morning, I'm in the very last theater, and there's maybe 5 minutes left before I can go home. He finds me, says there's weather 2 goddamn states over, and needs me to put a base layer of salt down. I grab the key to our salt shed and head out. As I'm opening the door, I hear my name. I look over and see him wave to me, get in his car, and drive home. I wasn't happy. Now, normally it would take about 3x 50-pound boxes to put down a good layer of salt around the entirety of the building, and it's a large building. But he put me in a bad mood. You're gonna make me come out here and do this, then leave me? Okay, fine. I put down 16 boxes, 800 pounds of salt, onto the sidewalks. There was more salt than sidewalk. When I came in at 5 the next afternoon, they were still sweeping off excess salt. I was asked what happened. I told them, and that's how I deleted a phrase from my manager's vocabulary. Edit. I live in Western PA, and the storm system was still in Indiana. Thank you. Next. So a little background. My husband and I currently live with our in-laws. We do pay and help out with things, so we're not freeloaders here. Currently, we're packing for a move, which is coming up in just under 2 weeks. Mill decided to host a party at the house even though we're currently working in several different rooms. The room that is causing the issue is the dining room. The food for the party is pizza, which does not require the dining room at all. Edit. We're moving in less than 2 weeks. She's been really against it and has made a lot of things difficult, constantly arguing and trying to make us change our plans to accommodate her. It's been frustrating and tiresome to deal with. So last night we were watching a movie. It ended around 10 p. Husband and I go into the kitchen to clean up. We cooked dinner and refresh our drinks before bed. Mill follows into the kitchen and immediately starts. Mill, you need to move everything out of the dining room. I want to clean this weekend. I won't have time next weekend. That's when the party is. Me, does it have to be this weekend? We can clean it up a little later this week when we have room to move the boxes upstairs. Mill, no, I'm working. I won't have time. It has to be this weekend. Me, okay, but there are 3 other people in the house. Why does it have to be you this weekend? You can do the living room and we can clean the dining room. It's just wiping the table and vacuuming. We can do that after we make room for the boxes. Mill, you mean it's not going to be cleaned? You can't just leave your stuff out. Me, it's just till like Thursday until we have more room for the boxes. It'll still be clean. It basically just continued on like that until I told her that in 2 weeks she wouldn't have to deal with our stuff ever again. To which she replied that there was a party in a week so it still had to be moved. At this point, Phil told her to shoot up because I guess he was tired of her arguing and recognized that she was getting on my last nerve. Fast forward to this Saturday morning. I wake up around 6 every day. I waited until about 9 a. Then came downstairs and began loudly packing the dining room and moving our stuff around. Mill sleeps in and doesn't get up until well after noon on the weekends, so my packing woke her up and she came out to stare at me with this priceless angry expression. I just smiled and continued marching up and down the stairs with my boxes. Once she realized I was not planning to stop, she got up for the day. That, of course, is when I went and did something else. You insisted that I move my stuff. You just didn't say when I had to move it. Thank you. Next. So, to give some background, my country has a mandatory army service. At 17, you get summoned to take physical and written tests to determine what you are capable of doing, and then you get sent to Manila from which you need to choose your priorities. Then you get drafted at 18 to the one most needed and that which you fit best to. You spend between 2-3 years in the army unless you declare that you want to do national service instead. Many girls choose to do that. Now, I'm asthmatic and have other health issues, so I didn't fit for anything but a desk job. But I still wanted to contribute, so I got drafted. Cue mandatory boot camp and a 4-month training course. We were drilled like normal soldiers are, though allowances were made for our sorry state since all of us had health problems. Only problem was, our commanders and officers came from actual combat boot camp. Don't ask me why the higher-ups thought it was a brilliant idea to let combat-able people be in charge of our drills and training, but they did. These people had no real understanding of what it was like to have health issues or be less than fit. Our sergeant especially was a real douche. You could just see the glee in his eyes every time he could haze or harass us. They were all able soldiers who got stuck in this job of training desk-bound wimps, and they hated that this is what their training amounted to. One day, during training, we were told to get our kit bags and bring everything to the parade ground and set our whole kit's contents on display to make sure we still had everything we signed on. Problem was, each squad was told something completely different in terms of the time frame we had to do that. My squad was given no time limit. So I went back to the tiny room I shared with 8 other people at my own pace, got my items in the kit bag, and lugged it back to the parade grounds, then got it sorted and displayed neatly like they wanted. I was by far not the last one to finish and had to wait for others to get there and set up. When the whole course was there at last, our commanders and officers showed up and launched at us, shouting insults and berating us at our time waste, ranting at us for not being on time, despite it being their own fault for not coordinating the times they gave us beforehand. Some of us tried to explain what happened, but they weren't interested in listening. As punishment, they started hazing us, telling us to pack up and run back to the dorms and giving impossible times, then berating us again when we got there and sending us to the parade grounds again to set up, again at impossible times, and so on. Back and forth, back and forth. Now, I wasn't supposed to be running at all, nor lugging the 10+ kg of a kit bag plus my rifle. I had an official military medical exemption from running and carrying upwards of 6 kilograms of weight. Yeah, I'm a wuss, I know, due to my asthma and other health issues, and I tried to flag down my commander and tell him that, sir, I'm not commander, don't waste my time soldier, just do as you're told, but he jogged on, not bothering to listen. They were all yelling, jogging by the stragglers and scolding them and egging them on to run, throwing insults and probably having the time of their lives, and they just weren't going to listen. So, I did exactly what they told us to do. I ran forth, ran back, made half-hearted attempts to set things up, knowing no one would get it on time, packed up, ran back, ran forth, and so on. By the second iteration of this, my asthma kicked in and I started hyperventilating. I couldn't breathe and felt lightheaded, to the point I got a buzzing in my ears and tunnel vision, the works. I couldn't get enough breath to yell, so I waved frantically at my neighboring cadet, trying to set things up on the parade floor. He and the other neighboring people took one look at me, panicked, and started screaming for the commanders. My commander raced towards us, saw me and went as pale as a ghost, panic shining in his eyes, and, I guess, the words training accident causes young woman's death and negligence at boot camp racing through his mind in all caps like accusing newspaper titles. The sergeant noticed a moment later, and around us, everything came to a standstill, hazing forgotten as the emergency made itself clear. Dead hours. What's wrong? My commander asked, but I could only choke out asthmatic running, can't breath, and crumple to the ground, trying not to black out. They all just stood there, white and panicking, none lifting a finger to help or calling a medic or anything, and I realized, fuck, these people are only like a year older than me, and they have no idea what to do and are probably in shock. So, folded on the ground like I was, wheezing and fighting for breath, I took out my canteen, opened it and started breathing into it, like you do with a bag. Eventually, my hyperventilating calmed down enough to allow some normal levels of oxygen to reach my brain, and I sat up and realized the rest of the commanders were trying to get another round of running and setting up, but it was half-hearted. They were all too shaken to put much heart into it and just let everyone set up for the last time so the items could finally be checked. My commander and the sergeant were still with me, still white as twin sheets, actual fear of being accused of my condition and what it could develop into on their faces. My commander was crouching beside me in worry, trying to determine if I was okay or if emergency units needed to be called, and what actually happened. I finally had enough breath to explain that I was asthmatic and had no business running and carrying that weight and being hazed like that. It was outright dangerous for me. Commander, dead hours. If you had a medical exemption you shouldn't have ran at all. You're not supposed to run if you can't. At that point I actually gave him the most accusing of looks, which I don't normally do because he has rank, and I'm a very non-confrontational person, especially facing authority. I tried to tell you, sir, but none of you would listen and you kept yelling and egging us to run and I really didn't want to get in trouble. They got very guilty looks on their faces, and looked at each other in silence and I could almost hear the "fuck, we went way too far" look they exchanged. They knew they are responsible for the well-being of their commands and they should have thought to verbally exempt everyone with medical issues from doing what they shouldn't do. As fresh soldiers, we were told to follow orders and didn't yet know that we could say no for medical issues. The commander stayed with me, virtually handling me with silken gloves all that time, making sure I was well enough to go to the medic. They made sure I was okay and I got the rest of the day off to rest in my room. Come dinner, I went to eat in the mess hall with the rest of my course and my commander hovered again, making sure there was no lasting damage. The whole course staff looked subdued, as if they were chewed out for that stunt and what it caused, and I was told firmly that from then on, I didn't even need to tell anyone. If anything involved carrying weight or running, I was not to do it and just go at my own pace or sit out until I could join the rest of the course. We were hazed a few more times after that. Yours truly strolled along leisurely, waiting for the frantic running to and fro to end, and then casually joined the course at destination. Others with medical exemptions took my example and opted out as well, and the staff made sure not to overdo things. Eventually they realized it was stupid to haze us if half of us can't medically be hazed at all, and they stopped altogether. But I'll never forget the look on their faces when they realized that their thoughtless orders and rash behavior could actually kill someone. The courses and the years after ours were staffed with less combat-ready commanders, more fit to comply with the training of medically challenged people.